Back to old school math, we're going to take a look at Algebra 2 IXL section I.8 powers of I. Now, if you watched my lecture on this, we know that the pattern for i's go as I1, and the two in the middle are negative, so you might hear me saying that a lot throughout this video. Now, by definition, I squared is just -1. Now, I to the fourth, by definition, we know is +1. And if we think about I squared times I squared would give us I to the fourth, -1 times -1, which is I squared. -1 times -1 is +1. I cubed, we go I1, and the two in the middle are negative. That means that -1 and -I are negative. So I cubed would be -1, I to the eighth. If we take the power here and we divide it by 4, we know that these repeat in fours. So if we take that exponent there of 8 and we divide it by 4, we get that it's 2. And 2 is a whole number. So anytime we get a whole number from these, we know that that's just going to give us the equivalent of 1. So anytime we take that exponent, divide it by 4, if it gives you a whole number or there's no remainder, then it's going to be 1. I to the ninth would be the next one in order here. So we got I to the eighth is 1. If we add another I or we multiply another I by that here, that's going to give us I. If we divide 9 by 4, we get a remainder of 1. So that tells us in the I1, and the two in the middle are negative. That tells us we're going to go to the first number in that pattern, which would just be I. I to the 0, anything to the 0 power is always 1. I to the 35. Now what I'm going to do is take 35 and I'm going to divide it by 4. So in my calculator, it gives me 8.75. Now that 0.75 as a fraction would be 3/4. So that tells me I'm going to look at the third number in the pattern. So I1, and the two in the middle are negative. So the third one in the pattern is just the -I. Submit. I to the 65th power, again, I'm going to take 65 and I'm going to divide it by 4. And I'm going to get 16.25. Now that 25 is a fraction would be the same thing as 1/4. So I'm going to look at the first number in the pattern. So that would just be I is the first number in that pattern. I1, and the two in the middle are negative. 256, if you divide 256 by 4, then you're going to get 64. That divides evenly. Anytime it divides evenly, the answer is 1. 573, if we divide 573 by 4, we'll get 143.25. So the remainder is 1 here. So anytime your remainder would be 1, that's just going to give you I. It's going to be the first number in that pattern. I1, and the two in the middle are negative. If you work backwards here and you get a negative in the top, then let's see how that would go. So I to the -2 would be the same thing as 1/I squared. So if you get 1/I squared, we know that I squared is -1. So this should be 1/-1 or just -1. Now, if you get stuck on something like this in your calculator, know that there is an I button. On the TI, 84, 83, any of that, hit the second button and then hit the period down here next to 0, and it pulls up I. Now, if you want to put a negative exponent in here, you can use this little caret kind of by the number pad under the clear, and you can put that -1 exponent in there, and you'll see that your calculator will actually evaluate that in terms of I. It'll tell you that that is -I. Let's do another one here just for fun. Let's put I to the -6 in the calculator, I to the -6, and hit enter to evaluate it, and you get that that's -1. We're at a smart score of 85 here. I think that's pretty good. Thank you all for watching Old School Math. If you have any questions about the powers of I, leave those in the comments below, and thanks for watching.